Welcome back to the Gore Guide, where we're on a journey to compile the definitive list of Gore and Splatter films. Today we're taking a look at the sci-fi action vampire film, Daybreakers. Daybreakers is a 2009 film written and directed by the Spierig brothers, starring Ethan Hawke, Willem Dafoe and Sam Neill. German-Australian twins Michael and Peter Spierig started their career making short films and directing TV commercials, but their big break came with their feature-length debut Undead in 2003. Although not a box office smash, it was a hit at the festivals and with the fans and opened the door to Hollywood for the brothers. Daybreakers was their second film, released at the height of Twilight frenzy. With their newly acquired access to bigger budgets and bigger stars, it's a totally different type of film altogether to their debut. And I don't just mean it's got vampires in it instead of zombies. But is it any good? Or should I have reviewed Undead instead? And most importantly, does it make it onto the definitive list of Gore and Splatter films? Well, let's take a look and find out. In the not too distant future, which is now actually the past, vampires are boring and rule the world, and humans are almost extinct. The supplies of blood are running out, and head hematologist Edward Dalton is working on a substitute. One fateful night, he runs into a group of humans who claim to be able to change vampires back into humans. But not all vampires want to be human again, and some still want to enjoy a nice bottle of Type O negative. Can Edward and the humans succeed with the cure before the human race is wiped out for good, or will it be the final nail in their coffin? Daybreakers looks great. The sets are basic but effective, and the filmmakers have created a pretty believable, futuristic but not too futuristic world. It doesn't have a very sci-fi look, and that may or may not be down to budget restraints, but it works. I particularly like what they did with the cars. They have shutters on the windows with cameras on the outside and monitors on the inside. It's a simple way to make it so that vampires can get around during the day. Not that safe though. Maybe they could have had, I don't know, like a self-driving car? Nah, that's ridiculous. The Spierig brothers are pretty solid directors, and possibly thanks to their advertising background, they really know how to capture the desired image, and there are some really well-framed shots. Daybreakers also benefits from having Willem Dafoe in it.
Lord Almighty, feel my temperature rising.
I enjoy him in most things that he's in, and although he doesn't have a lot to work with here, he livens up an otherwise pretty dull cast. I'll talk about the story and plot in the bad section, but the general concept is interesting. Humans are almost extinct in a world run by vampires and the blood is running out. It's a not so subtle metaphor for any number of environmental issues, but it provides the basis for a decent film. And there are some excellent scenes, like when a subsider, the vampires that have mutated due to blood deprivation, gets into Edward's apartment. And some superb action, like when the human convoy is attacked in the dark. I love the way the vampires explode. A lot of the effects in Daybreakers are CG, but there are some really good practical effects thrown in there as well. The makeup for the subsiders is great, and there's a pretty gruesome scene showing the aftermath of a massacre in a cabin. But most of all, I love the way the film ends. It escalates quickly and culminates in a bloodbath, which is quite surprising, but very much appreciated. There's a slow motion shot used at the peak of the violence, which is just absolutely superb. It reminded me of the Massacre of the Innocents by Rubens, and it's just fantastic. First off, I'll never understand why filmmakers who are making a futuristic film decide to set it in a specific year. Daybreakers was made in the futuristic year of 2019, which was just 10 years after it was made. I just feel like it kind of ruins the effect once that year's passed. And you know another thing that ruins the effect? Terrible effects. And some of the CGI on display here is just bad. It feels like the Spierig brothers got a bit carried away with themselves after they broke into Hollywood, and they thought they were making a film that's much more epic than it turned out to be. The score is far too grandiose, and not including the excellent shot used at the end, there's way too much slow-mo used. It's not a Michael Bay or John Woo film. And don't get me wrong, I'm not knocking their ambition, but this is basically a B-movie with a bigger budget. Don't try and make it something that it isn't. Concentrate on getting the basics right first, and unfortunately some of the basics here need more work. The dialogue's pretty bad, the characters are generic, the pacing is uneven, and while the concept is interesting, it's not used to its full potential. I would have liked to have seen more of the human uprising or a vampire revolution where the poor and hungry attack the rich. And I would have loved to have seen more of the subsiders. They were a great idea, sorely underused. The overall impression is that the filmmakers weren't sure what type of film they were trying to make. It's not a sci-fi, it's not horror, and it's not really action. Daybreakers was released at the height of Twilight craze, and I don't know if they were forced to tone down the violence so as not to scare off the Twihards or what, but the end product sits in an uncomfortable position between the drama of Twilight and the action of Blade. Speaking of which, the Blade films were a very obvious influence on Daybreakers. The Blade films are brilliant, and yes, I even like Blade Trinity, but the similarities are just a bit much. In addition to both films having the humans searching for a cure to the vampire disease, we also have the parallels of Blade being a daywalker, and this film is called Daybreakers. Both have mutated vampires, the Subsiders in Daybreakers and the much more aggressive Reapers in Blade 2. Daybreakers also has a blood farm, just like Blade Trinity. And then you have the two human helpers, one feisty woman, Audrey here and Karen in Blade, and Willem Dafoe's Elvis is obviously Whistler. However, the main and fundamental difference between Blade and Daybreakers is the lack of a decent central character. Instead of Blade, here we get Bland. Ethan... Hawke is a terrible lead actor. He's just so forgettable. The only film I ever remember him being in is Training Day, and he spends the majority of that film being yelled at and beaten up. So that's a big downfall of this film. With no protagonist to root for, there's no real investment, and everything feels kind of inconsequential. For instance, there's a whole subplot about the head vampire played by Sam Neill and his daughter, which is just stupid and unnecessary. It's just a ham-fisted way of showing the audience that he's evil. There are also a few twists, for lack of a better word, but where the Spierig brothers' first film, Undead, has one big twist that you won't see coming, the ones in Daybreakers just kind of pass you by, not really making any impact. There are some decent practical gore effects and makeup used in Daybreakers, especially in the final act when things go a bit crazy, but it could have been a bit more balanced and been used a bit more evenly throughout the rest of the film. So it gets 3 out of 5 for amount of blood and 3 out of 5 for quality of effects. Daybreakers is a mixed bag. It feels like the Spierig brothers had delusions of grandeur while they were making it, and the film suffers from not knowing exactly what it wants to be. It would have definitely benefited from more action if that's what they were going for, but as it sits now, there's too much violence for the Twilight fans and not enough for the Blade fans. There are some good scenes, however, with some great action, and it ends in a satisfying bloodbath, but there's far too much boring dialogue, unnecessary plot lines, and worst of all, a bland central character with, what's his name? Guy from Training Day, Ethan someone. Is a bird. Ethan Eagle? No. Hawke. Ethan Hawke. Willem Dafoe seems like he's at least having fun with his character, and Sam Neill is Sam Neill. Everyone else is just kind of forgettable. And there's some terrible CGI, which considering the budget and what the CG was used for, it's pretty inexcusable. It's not like they were creating some huge monsters or some outlandish stunts. It was for things that could quite easily have been done in real life. In the end, Daybreakers is average. It's not great, but it's definitely not terrible, so it gets 3 out of 5 stars. But does it make it onto the definitive list of gore and splatter films? Yes, but only just by the skin of its fangs, thanks to a couple of graphic scenes and a nice little bloodbath at the end.
Welcome back to humanity. Now you get to die.
Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on Daybreakers. Was I being too critical about whatever his name is? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell to keep up to date with new content. Until next video, have a bloody good time.